So you can put yours in on the back side of this. And then I'll finish up the rest of it. Get a chance. We are ready.
Oh, here.
Did you turn
I
it
got
on?
lots of pens.
This is on.
It's okay.
Recorder's on. All right, I am officially opening up the January 13 meeting of the Town Council and calling to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any, I guess the proper protocol would be to approve the agenda or have a motion to approve and a second, hold on. And then if there are any changes or additions or deletions, that they would be added at that time.
And we have to know who's absent from the meeting.
You have to know who's absent. Absence is Mr. O'Connell and Ms. Liggett and the Town Council, SEL, Mr. Bennett. All right, so that has been noted, and do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
No.
All right, I didn't get a motion from you. I
Oh,
heard him
okay.
first. May I get a second?
I'll second. Yeah,
Thank you.
back first. I'll say
Second.
it backwards.
And now, do we have any additions or deletions?
Oh, yes. We have under new business, right? We have the urgent situation at the water treatment plant.
All right, urgent situation, we'll put that under as D, urgent situation. At the water,
Yes.
Wastewater?
At the pump
No.
house.
Pump house.
Oh, the pump house.
always say at the pump house so that we don't have
Doesn't say
confusion.
plant.
All right. All right, anything else? All right, that'll be added as D under new business. If that is all, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Roll call, please. All those in favor will indicate by saying aye. Mr. Schneider? Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have an agenda. We also have minutes from the last meeting, which I want to take this moment to thank officially Mary Ann for stepping in at the last minute and taking over after I came down with a sudden illness. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for staying on.
Yeah.
Yes. I make a motion, I approve that.
That's right. It was duly noted that all the members of the town council thanked Mr. Catlin for staying home that meeting. Wish he would do it more often. All right, are there any, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Oh, make a motion to approve.
All right,
Second.
second from Gail. Are there any changes or, I'd also like to take a moment since the beginning of the year to thank Barbara for getting these done and for Mary Ann for the schedule that you all have done so that we get these on a timely basis. It's really helpful.
Well, this particular, these minutes were easy because it was a short meeting.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot going on. That's right, you were trying to best my record. I think you did. All right, without any changes being noted, may I have a roll call for approval? Brad?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, yes.
All right. Unanimous approval of the minutes and reports. Let me start with the mayor's report. I am sad to say that I want to break off my mayor's report, just say that Ms. Leggett is here in attendance as a member of the town council. So we welcome you. Thanks for being here. I will start with sad news, which is that Susanna Smith, who recently came on as a member of the Architectural Review Board, has submitted her resignation as she is leaving the town of Washington. I don't know why, but she's leaving the town of Washington to take a position down in Lynchburg, Virginia. So we wish her the very best, and I want to have it known publicly that the town of Washington is inviting applicants for the Architectural Review Board. The requirement is that the applicant must be a citizen of the town, since we already have the one allowed out-of-town board member. The second thing I want to do is give you an update on the post office. So the submission of all the final applications will be occurring on Wednesday morning. I had an opportunity to spend a couple hours quality time with Mr. Tedrick this afternoon, and we went from office to office and trying to get everything done expeditiously. As is usual, we are at the behest of an agency of the federal government. This time it is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh, Christ.
I know. We have a small area that is wetlands, and whenever there's any wetlands in any property, it needs to be reviewed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers or their designees. Unfortunately, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, it's the Army Corps of Engineers themselves. The really ironic, perhaps sad part of this is that the area that is encompassed in the wetlands is very small. I think it was 10 by 15 square feet. And none of it was planned to be disturbed. It is not in the soil disturbance area. Nevertheless, it needs to get the sanctioning of the Army Corps of Engineers, who've had the application for 6 weeks and have not responded yet. So we are basically ready to go once we have that approval from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. When will it come? We have no idea. So that's the most recent thing. All the final site plans, the soil disturbance plans, everything else that needs to go will go to the county on Wednesday morning. Ms. Babson is making sure that all the things that have been approved by the town council and by the zoning administrator are sent on so that they can be submitted as well. I want to also take an opportunity to reach out, and in this instance, I have besmirched them in the past, and I want to go out and praise the U.S. Postal Service for their support at this time, and the Postmaster General for the support that office is getting to try to expedite this process as much as can be done. As I said, we are at the mercy now of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Once that gets done, we're ready to go.
Mr. Mayor, has, in the 6 weeks that the Army Corps of Engineers has had this, has anyone you know
Yes.
made a site visit?
We have not received any indication that they've done a site visit. So.
Do you know if that's typical that they come out and?
No, that's not. There was an independent assessment that the developer did, Mid-Atlantic Coastal Properties did. They submitted with the information they submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers that basically talks about the wetlands, where it's located, and any impact, which is not, that it would have, that the building would have on it. So all that was submitted. By an
And the
independent-
developer, can he do anything to urge them to make a decision?
He has been contacting them on a weekly basis. So we're trying to do whatever we can. I also want to reach out to the county. The county is sensitive to the fact that the town of Washington would like to have a post office in place, and people in the county administration are trying to be as helpful as they possibly can. They obviously have restrictions that they're working with. We're trying to go, all of us, and move as expeditiously as we can. So, I wish I could get better news. The good news is once that approval comes, things will be happening very, very fast. So, which is exciting to know.
Maybe that would be when we're just getting out of the winter.
Pardon?
Hopefully before that.
Yeah. As I recall from Mr. Tedrick's comments at the Architectural Review Board meeting, the shell of the building will be built in his estimation in 60 days. And then the interior will be done thereafter. And when I say the shell, I mean the walls, the roof, and I presume the interior sheetrock and all the basic finish work. And then what they'll do is the person who has to come in and finish off putting in the mailboxes and doing all the counters and everything else will do that. I don't know if Mid-Atlantic Postal Properties got that contract or whether someone else got that contract. I haven't heard. But that will happen immediately thereafter. I do know that the Postal Service and the Postmaster General is very, very anxious to get this done as quickly as possible. And they are being as supportive as they possibly can be in this whole process. So, if you count out 60 days from now, you're talking about mid-March. And then the
They're
interior...
digging the foundation, right?
No, it's a pad. It's on a pad.
Oh,
And the interior work, one would hope, would be less than a month thereafter. So we're hoping to be in there by sometime mid to late spring. So that's the best estimate we can get. Yeah. So next thing will be, and all the people who want to be on that committee will get that committee going now to look at the landscaping, to look at the placard, to recognize the previous building that was on that site, and also to help design the U.S. Postal Service sign that will go out in front on the street. So that is the most recent update on the Postal Service. I'll save the rest of my comments until, actually I'll bring them up now. So there are a couple of things that I see as my hope, and this is from me, but we'll have a chance to talk about it more as a council when we get to new business. But my hope is that there are a number of different new initiatives that will happen in 2020 for the town. I'd like to continue to forge closer connections with the county administration, with the new Board of Supervisors. I want to put an emphasis, as was requested in the comprehensive plan, to make the town more walkable and take steps to make this town a much more walkable place. I'd like to see more housing options available, which is also something that came into the comprehensive plan. Also, another piece of the plan was to have new businesses that benefit both the town and its citizens come in. So we're excited about that. And as a personal goal, I would like Washington to be a more inclusive community. There is a misperception that Washington, Virginia is exclusive or standoffish, and I'd like to once and for all bury that misperception and show that we are an inclusive community.
well, with the cafe going, we have become less inclusive in a way, because that certainly catered to a bigger variety
Yeah.
of citizens, residents.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, so that is my report. treasurer's report.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have a lot of notes. First, thank you. The audits are done.
Excellent.
4 years' worth are done. Here, you have copies if you want them. You also have them electronically. Of the 15, 16, and 16, 17 audits. The accounting firm is just wrapping up the 17, 18, and 18, 19 audits.
This
And
is
it's just they're doing the final report here.
This
So
is
Laura-
their,
Sorry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Laura is finished with her telling then?
No, she's on a regular consulting basis when we meet her.
Right, but she was, I remember there was a whole thing specifically
Right,
about the audit.
Yes, that's
and-
done.
So that's done, so she would then receive the bonus that was being held back.
I think she's got one more thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The list of, a compilation of all the ordinances of the town.
But she'll get a check this month. Yeah, so she'll get it.
Good, that's
Should be,
wonderful.
should be this month.
All right, and we have, I will refer citizens, these will be available in the town clerk's office.
Yes.
Okay, and I would refer citizens, if they don't want to read all the different numbers, auditors' reports have a management letter at the beginning of their report. And that's always a good indicator of things. Did they find anything of concern in any of their management letters besides the timeliness?
No, no. We're having to move some money around just between accounts, but nothing major, nothing untoward at all.
No
Everything's-
malfeasance?
No, nothing, everything's just fine. And we're gonna go ahead and, or Barbara's gonna go ahead and get with them and get them on the books for October, so that we're already done. You will note on the bills to be paid that you just signed a check for $20,000. Those were the first 2 years. So next month, probably we'll be signing a check for another $20,000.
That's basically
That- I
kind of
must-
a going rate.
Yes, and I must tell you that both Barbara and I are very pleased with the accounting firm. We love working with them, and their institutional knowledge of the town was just so helpful as we were going through all of this.
That's great. I want to take a moment to thank both Barbara and Gail. They put in a lot of work on this to get these audits done. I know Laura Dodd put a lot of work, and I want to thank her too. All three of you put in an extraordinary amount of work in the midst of a move and everything else going on to get that done. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Some of the checks are checks for us, and just for a note moving forward, could you please cash the checks? Next month, you'll be getting checks. I won't name names. Some of you went several months without cashing any checks. So I avoided everything, and I'll be getting the Barbara, and you'll be getting one check to cover the whatever months. So
The uncashed.
I avoided the uncash. Avoided the uncash. Friday, Fred, Mary Ann, Brad, and I are meeting at the bank at 2 o'clock to get Brad on the wastewater account.
Oh, good. Lucky you. We need you.
Well,
Yeah.
we were just lucky that I thought about signing some checks because I was going to be out of the country, and ESS would not have been paid. And a lot of other people would have been paid because it mandates 3 people sign the checks, just the wastewater. There's something in our mortgage of the loan on the wastewater plant, that there have to be 3 signatures on every check. So it made a lot of sense to have Brad on as the 4th in case anybody, you can usually always get 3 of us.
All right.
Okay, now what you're looking at, Fred,
Yep.
is my first draft
Oh, excellent.
of a new treasurer's report. And I did something specific this time that I won't be doing next month or the month after, but first of all, you'll notice you don't have to look at how many gallons of water were pumped or whatever. Brad and I are going to be reviewing those separately, so Brad especially. And if you look at, so there's your income versus expense just for the month. Then your income year-to-date in budget and your expenses year-to-date in budget. So in this month, I did put the year-to-date budget as opposed to the entire year's budget, which I will do next time. But being the end of 6 months, I thought it important to point out a couple of things. Most importantly, that if you look at the wastewater treatment plant, we've already gone through 71% of the annual budget, and it's only 6 months out. So I just wanted to note that for you.
You know, the treasurer is always the bearer of bad news.
Well, I'm not done. And if you look at the income, for the wastewater treatment plant with those 2 asterisks, I purposely did not put in what we have for a budget line item of transferring funds from a general account or whatever over to this, so that you could look and see that the income is only covers 61% of the expenses.
Okay.
The income year-to-date overall is fine. I'm very glad that we were extremely conservative on the meals and lodging taxes. So that will, you'll see some changes in the general now that the country cafe is closed. Brad and I were talking about a couple of things today that might be helpful for people who don't want to have to worry about looking at numbers and all of that, is have a column that's percentages, so that you'll know that we've already used up 71% of our budget, or whatever, or we've only used up 10% of our budget.
Do we do I don't know what the right terminology is, do we do a weighted budget so that you do it? You know, if you know that you're going to have a bigger expense in, say, May, you do that, or do we take the budget and divide it into 12?
What we're doing this time, good question, because this is the first time that the budget's been incorporated in QuickBooks.
Right.
So we're going to finish out just divide it by 12 through the end of June. Barbara and I've already talked about where we have the 2 big payments on the loan for the wastewater plant, and we know when they are. We'll just budget those right in.
Okay.
Those ones. So yes, we will be doing some, but that's really the only one that we know that we can wait.
Is this income for December, the 40,000, is that meals and lodging tax?
That's everything in the general, that's meals and lodging, and all those ancillary taxes that we get money for from
So could we
transfers.
add a thing here so we can see what meals and lodging is?
Meals and lodging is 95, pretty much 95%.
But I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see a comparison of, from like this time last year is what it was. Every once in a while, maybe every 6 months, we could do a comparison.
Yeah, and we'll do that when we get together to do the first draft of the next budget. We'll do that.
I think
But
this,
going forward on this, it would be nice to see meals and lodging
Sure.
exactly on this list here. Okay.
this is great.
I'll do meals and lodging and then other. Because the other is just those ancillary taxes and stuff. That's good?
This is great. Thank you very much, Gail. Thank you very much, Barbara, for all this work that you guys have put into this.
Any other comments or questions? Or, okay, everybody like adding the percentage column?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Meals and lodging.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
I'm gonna break that up, meals and lodging and other. That's an easy one.
For general.
Anything else on that? Joe and I are gonna go over some stuff later, and Brad and I are gonna be sitting down on a regular basis. Seems like he and I are the ones that are spending all the money, thank you.
Oh,
No time. We won't do it all at the same time.
were you involved in putting this together?
No. Nobody was. This was me and Barbara. So that's why input from, but Brad and I are going to be reviewing on a regular basis. Well, we probably do it almost daily these days anyway. The expenses and repairs on the pump house, the water works and the treatment plant. Okay?
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report and obviously the bills to be paid there?
So,
Thank you. In a second?
Sure.
Catherine? All right, Joe moved and Catherine second that we approve the treasurer's report and the bills to be paid therein. Any changes or?
So one, just as an FYI, what we're going to do moving forward, Barbara's idea. This is the reason we kept her around, right?
She had to put up with me twice today, so.
Woo! Brad is going to be reviewing all of the bills that are coming in from ESS and anybody else
Excellent.
involved in the infrastructure. Just as a second set of eyes on there.
All right, we have a motion, and we'll have a roll call vote. If in favor, Brad?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
yes.
All right. It is passed unanimously. The next item on planning commission, no one is here. Are you going to be the?
We did not have a meeting. We're going to have a meeting on the 27th. Caroline's out of town, Judy will chair it. We're then going to be looking at the meals and lodging, the whole ordinance thing for the
Trucks.
trust.
And then
We
we
have a
also,
lot of information from John Bennett.
good. And then we also
What are you reviewing again?
The trucks.
have an ordinance
Food
on
trucks.
food trucks.
Oh, okay.
And then the other thing that I think we talked to the planning commission about is derelict properties.
Probably the ARB needs to review that first,
Okay,
because there is, in the historic ordinances,
there is something.
there is something in there that's just,
You know, I was thinking today, the county a year and a half ago or 2 years ago had something regarding that Lombardy restaurant
Right, on 211.
over at Amosville. So they must have something in their ordinance,
yeah.
some kind of ordinance on it.
The other thing from the planning commission is a request that the ARB update the ordinances.
Right, and their ordinance, their guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they agreed at, I can't remember what it was, the November or December meeting. I tasked that with them and they agreed that they would take that on.
Good.
So. All right. Thank you for that report from the planning commission. Do we have any report from the architectural review board? Barbara, do you know of anything? Okay. They met last week. I wasn't able to attend.
Oh, they
Yes,
approved the
yes.
sign.
They approved the sign for the National OKU Bank.
Okay. And so Washington does have a new business that is coming in that will be in Main Street. And it would be nice. It would be nice. As I gather, it's not going to be a retail. There won't be a
No.
retail
No.
branch. It will just be office.
Yes, it's just Jason.
Right.
It's
So
not
it would be nice to have Jason Brady back in town.
Oh, he is doing the numbers, I understand.
Yeah.
Yes, but you
So I
can't go
think-
in and cash a check.
Yeah, a little bit.
They won't have to tell her there or what have you. All right. Great. Looks like I'm getting this all confused. I'm going to leave it to Ms. Swift to figure out what I've done wrong. There you go. All right, the next thing on our report is John Bennett, regrets not being here. He was on a trip and he got caught in snows, I think out in Chicago. So he was not able to get out of the maelstrom that is O'Hare Airport in time to join us. So, move on from that to old business. Consideration of proposal from ESS to do a detailed inventory of the the wastewater treatment plant and a risk assessment.
Yeah, what, Gail and I met with Cody from ESS, and what they agreed to do is, they're gonna do that inventory at no cost to us.
Okay.
And what we're gonna be doing is sort of incorporating that, or using that as one of the materials in our contract review with ESS, because we have a new contract that needs to be drawn up. And the other thing that we're gonna do under that contract is we're gonna look at the past year's billings, because there's been additional hours. And when we buy additional hours from ESS, they're priced at a higher rate than the hours in the contract. So one of the plans is to see how many hours we bought, incorporate that in, so the total of the contract will go up, but it'll still be a savings to the town.
Good.
And it will give those guys an additional hour a day or whatever, they can get things done that currently they can't. So that's gonna be a complete review of
But
everything.
that's just the inventory, that's not the risk assessment's gonna be another.
The risk assessment is another one where we're actually looking at all of the components, and looking at what is the life of the components, what is their current age, so we can get some sort of a plan forward as to things that are gonna come up needing repairs.
Okay.
So, one example of that is the sludge pump. Now, we have one of the sludge pumps has failed, and so there's a temporary pump that they put in place. We got a quote to replace the same pump, which was $3,800, and we approved that. I then went, spent time at the plant and everything else. I designed a new solution for that, so we can replace, actually we have all the pieces and parts from both basins, and I did it for $4,000. So I saved us about $2,000
Great.
on that deal. And we've got some other areas where I think we're
That's
gonna
great. Thank you, Brett.
squeeze some dollars out, and that's, first step. So that's wastewater. We do have a couple other things that we're starting to look at and figure out to try to optimize. We have valves that are wrapped in insulation and covered with garbage bags. And it sort of works because we have to prevent them from freezing. And we have drop cords all over the place. So we're getting quotes to put in some proper outlets so that we don't have these long extension cords. And then I've got a company that I've just got to find out from them what is the procedure, but they make proper jackets that go around these valves with the heater elements built in, and you literally lace them up so they're there properly. And that way we can prevent, the problems. Now, we haven't had the cold weather, but I think it was 2 years ago or such, one of the valves froze and there was no influence to the plant. So we're looking at that. The other thing that we are going to be doing is we've had some issues come up recently with the inn and their discharges to the plant. We've had to go in and have some pumping done, and I've been talking to them about, understanding what part of that system do we own and what part does the inn own? Because I'm guessing that when the inn says, oh, it's being pumped, things like the grease trap are not actually being cleaned. So TJ and I are going to meet with the head of maintenance for the inn, go through and figure out what is the whole system, how does it work, what inflows are coming in from where. And the reason we want to do that is because of the kitchen and the nature of their cooking, they produce an awful lot of grease and fats. And grease and fats are bad for the treatment plant. And that's why they have a grease trap, so those can get pumped and taken somewhere else. So there are a couple of repairs that need to be done. They did fix something that had been sort of band-aided for some time. But one of the plans is to work with the inn and then insist that we do a deep cleaning of that system, thoroughly scour it and clean it and pump it all out, and then establish with them, or they go out and establish a program to have the grease trap pumped on a regular basis, that we have a copy of that, so we know that they are doing this. Because what's happening is, we incur costs that we in turn bill to the inn, and then they pay us back. And it's like, you know, we need to get out of that business of being an intermediary. So there's a number of things that are associated with the inn, and as I take care of the inn, I'm also going to look at and make sure that when the cafe is done, there's a proper grease trap there and a procedure for keeping it clean. And then we're also going to, I need to go and check with Tula's and make sure they have a grease trap. They have a container outside. You're supposed to dump your fryer grease in there. But we want to make sure that if anything is going down the drain, it first hits that grease trap before. Because one of the things that can happen, and we haven't encountered it yet, but if you do get these surges of grease going through, it can congeal in the piping, in the sewer piping. And our system is not set up to be cleaned the way traditional sewer systems are, because ours is a pump system, it's not a gravity feed. So we plug a line, we literally have to go into the line and break it to get the cleaning equipment in there. So it's imperative that we have a good plan that keeps our system functioning and flowing.
Brad, didn't we have like 2, maybe 3 years ago, I can't quite remember, that Tula's didn't have to have the grease trap. There was some thing about cost, and we said, no, they don't have to have it because they're not ever going to do French fries or any fried food. Something like that. So now they've switched their menu out.
Well, the thing is, we go back to the health department, because I believe by code, they have to. It's not really an option for us to say you don't need it.
That was the reason that they waited when they started, it was big to do.
There was, and I just remember them talking about thousands of dollars, right?
Right, so one of the things is to get with the health department and pull the codes and we know, you know, under the Virginia Health Code, you have to have that for a restaurant, you know, regardless of size or whatever, and then we can put that out there. Right.
Let me clear something up. So whose responsibility is it to clean the grease trap? And whose responsibility is it just be sure it's done?
It should be the owner.
You're talking about the grease trap in the restaurant,
Yeah.
Right,
not in our facility.
right. There should be a grease trap at the head of the pit.
In the restaurant.
Right, there's outside the inn, the glass, all that big windows that are looking into the kitchen, in the flower bed is a deep pit, okay? So everything flows into there and then it's pumped out to the treatment plant. But one of the flows going into that pit comes from the kitchen. And so between that pit and the kitchen, there should be a grease trap. So the floor drains and the sinks and everything else should flow through that. And we need to know that one is there.
And that's all the responsibility of the property.
The
And
property.
what we're also going to be doing is regular testing.
Right, we're going to start implementing testing because we do have a limit of how much we can handle in the plant. And as the guys have said, there have been events where you look at the basin and there's a big thick layer of foam. The grease is what produces that foam and creates that. And it's
And where do they see this?
down at the treatment plant,
Okay.
at the wastewater plant. And they have to do a lot of manipulations.
How often does that happen?
I must have done that with my foot.
We'll have a brief pause as
We reset that.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Some restaurants call in trucks to come pump it out.
Yes,
They do. The
Yes. right, they'll have Allstate or All Star Septic come and pull.
I wonder if there's going to be any difference in the show of that foam with the cafe closed. Because they did a lot of fry food.
Right, and I don't know if they were, very judicious about keeping the grease out of the sinks or not. So.
So it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see.
So does the health department inspect us to be sure that these grease traps are working properly?
That I have to find
Or
out,
who does
just what is their responsibility,
I
roles,
think
and
that
things
is
like
their
that.
responsibility.
But it's pretty clear that we need to have something in place with our various eating establishments to make sure they're in compliance and that it's protecting our plant. Because again, if we have a problem, it's just gonna drive our costs up, be it a single event or it can, impact, long-term, the operation of the plant. So this is why we want to sort of get proactive and with the ends, like I said, I want to go in there and have everything thoroughly cleaned right down to the concrete. So now we have a zero baseline.
Right.
Because right now, what's happened is, we had a problem, they hired someone to come in and pump it out, but it wasn't clear, did they pump all the way to the bottom? Or, did they pump the water off the bottom and the grease was on the top? There's lots of questions. So I want it thoroughly clean, and then we say, okay, here we are at a new baseline, and we move forward. That way we can track and see what's happening. If we are seeing a lot of grease in that pit, that is our pit, see it's pumped from, then we need to talk to him and say, what's happening? What are you not doing? What are your staff not doing, to ensure that, we're not having this bypass of grease? Is your grease trap not being cleaned on a regular basis?
And the guidelines are all in the sewer ordinance, so this is.
Yeah, it's there, so it's not like we're not, sort of going out to pick a fight with anybody, but we're just kind of making sure that things are being run, because again, just trying to get a better handle on the treatment plant, its operations, and this all goes back to trying to optimize our operating expenses.
It makes sense to have a new clean starting place, but I wonder if that would add a lot of expense to get to that zero.
Well, there's going to be a cost to do that, pump, because you're going to, what I want is to have someone come in with a pressure washer that's hot water, not cold water, so it peels that grease away, so we can say, fine, everything's now clean, because there's floats in there that do different things, and they get coated with grease. So we want to make sure it's all clean, so that the system is working properly, because the floats weren't. There's 2 pumps in there, one of them, there's a chain that you use to lift it out, you have to service it, and one of them, the chain is broken. So you can't even lift the pump out if it isn't working. So there's all these little things that have been overlooked and not maintained. So ESS says we can, kind of keep an eye on that as part of our contract duties, because that is such a significant flow to the treatment plant. So we're going to incorporate that they, would make a routine inspection of that. Just
So all these years they weren't doing this, they weren't checking this?
Well, not that I know.
What
A
happened?
monthly inspection report.
No, I can tell you what happened, is that it was 3 years ago, ESS was asked to take over the pump house also. Some responsibilities down at the pump house. And in order to, and this is from ESS, this is from Don Earl explaining it to me, the contract price was kept the same with the understanding that the maintenance would not fall under the contract. It would be additional costs. So it just fell between the cracks. So it wasn't put on a regular basis.
But maintenance and a maintenance report are 2 different things. Like the condition report.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here again, there's been a lot of things falling between the cracks. There's things that have not been done procedurally because no one's been kind of keeping an eye on it and saying, well, we need to get feedback. We need to know what's going on down there, for a long
Whose
time.
responsibility is that?
Well, it's sort of shared. The town should have certain responsibility to kind of oversee, but then we should be making sure that ESS is producing reports.
Right.
And so in a long-term view, for example, we don't really know day to day what that plant does. Okay, they write down a few numbers or something, but we really don't know what is the flows, what are our pH levels, or, certain amount has to be recorded for our state reports. But if you were to say, What was the plant doing at 12 noon? No clue. Because when the plant was built, corner after corner after corner was cut to lower the price of the project. And so a proper control system was never put in there. You got some buttons and lights and things, and that's about all you got. But in terms of data recording, so you can kind of see what's happening, you know, are you getting a lot of flow during the day or not, or is it certain hours of the day? How's it affecting you seasonally, everything else? We don't have any of that information. You have a bunch of numbers that someone's got to go put it into a spreadsheet that will crunch it and do it.
Seems like there'd be a program to keep track of that.
There's plenty of them. There's plenty of systems.
That's coming.
And that's in my long-term plan or hopes for the plant is that will be installed, a system to do that. And that system will also be able to connect to the pump house. So we have accurate numbers of what the pump house is doing. So, you know, and to have that information transmitted by cellular all day, every day, it's just coming over every few minutes. And we're getting that information. So then we can see what's happening with our water flows and pressures and all kinds of things. So that we see, oh, wait a minute, we're pumping this much, but we're only selling this much. And so instead of the static numbers we get once a month, we can pick up on that, you know, within a day and go, there's a leak somewhere. Because the software is going to start checking it. It's going to be looking at it every 15 minutes or whatever. And so, you know, it can highlight and say, it appears that we're losing water somewhere. So we have a chance to get a hold of that. So these are, you know, some of the things, they can't be done overnight. Some of these systems are expensive to put in. It requires some upgrades. But, yeah, in the long term, there are things that we can do that are going to reduce our operating costs. You know, energy is a big component of running that plant. There are motors there that run flat out, full load, regardless of the load they're serving. When they can be running at half power, 25% power. The way the plant's built, you turn them on and they stay on. And as a result, we spend an awful lot of money when we could probably cut. Don and I actually talked about some possible changes. He said, yeah, if you went down and did, you know, this, and this, yeah, you probably cut your power bill 40%.
Wow, that's important.
What's our monthly power bill, do you have an idea?
At one time, I saw a number, I think it was like $2,600.
That sounds about right for the
Yeah, I think that's what it was for the treatment.
slivers and the
Yeah. But, you know, again, and so as we look at some of these projects, you know, it's like, okay, there's a cost savings, so we take that money, that helps to pay for it. The other thing that Gail and I talked about is with things like the inventory and the analysis of all the components and else, is this area, and what are the things that we want to do in this plant to upgrade it, make improvements, and then see if we can't go out and find a grant. Because we are a small community, so both on the wastewater, and Nancy's done some really good bird dogging on possible sources of funding on the water side.
Right.
So, you know,
Okay.
what we can do is go after some of these funds and say, we're a small community, don't have a lot, but we need to do these upgrades. We want to do an energy upgrade, or we want to do something that's, might be a demonstration of a technology that can be applied to other small communities. And by virtue of that, through EPA, DOE, whatever, you get a grant.
Yeah.
Typically what they do is they execute those through USDA, they actually handle the money, but, you know, that's how it's brought to us, and we can make some improvements. I mean, solar power, you know, how much energy do we need for the pump house? Could we have a little solar array out there, basically running the pump house with a battery system so that we can all effectively take the pump house off the grid, you know? Yeah, so these are some of the things that I'm kind of looking at.
And we'll throw around some of these things at the budget review.
Yeah, Barbara just pulled it up here. So for the wastewater account last month, $2,457. So yeah, we can start trimming some of those dollars. Let's put that money back into other things within the plan. Or ultimately build up our account, you know, under the wastewater accounts, so.
All right.
Yeah.
There was something else that I want to bring, and I was misread this. So I'm not bringing it up as a new agenda item tonight, but I'd like to bring it up in the February meeting. We had thought we might be able to get some funding to get that capacity estimate, get a better sense of where we are in terms of the capacity. And I think this is an important thing for us as a town to do. So I'd like to bring that up as a potential item for the town to spend, I think it was $7,000 to $8,000 to look at that. Bring that up at the February meeting.
Yeah.
Is
As a
that
discussion.
because our original capacity numbers don't fit anymore?
We never had, as I understand it now, we never received an original capacity number. What happened is we did some extrapolations, and those extrapolations gave us a number of 250 residents or users, I guess. And but that was all based on extrapolations. And so we want to go get some real accurate idea, especially as there are people interested in doing some exciting things in the community, and we want to make sure that we can handle that capacity. So,
Yeah, and now, because we have the plan, and you can actually look at what is the inflow, we know what the design capacity is. So, it's not that difficult a process, but it's just,
We've got the proposal from ESS.
yeah,
Right.
so it's just a matter of.
So what I'd like to do is dust that off and bring that up for an agenda item, Barbara, for the February
Okay,
meeting.
yeah, that would be worthwhile.
Good.
All right, thank you, Brad, thank you so much for all your time and effort on this effort. I really
Oh,
appreciate
one final thing, we had 2 motors for the mixer systems that we got given to us, or.
We bought them from Louisa,
Oh, that's what we got. We got them on the cheap from Louisa.
used but good.
Yeah, because we had one motor that was bad, and when we took it up to be serviced, we found that the shaft was bent, it was not worth repairing. So these other 2 motors, we took them to Manassas Electric, they went through them. One was fine, we just needed to install a heater for the winter operation. The other one needed, I think, like a nylon bearing or something like that, very minor. But they've gone through the motors, they're both all now repaired. They're ready for me to pick them up, which I will do hopefully before the end of the week. And we put them back in the treatment plant. So if one of our mixers goes down, we can lift it out, replace the motor, put it back in. And the cost to do that was less than half the price of a single new motor.
The new order is $20,000.
Yeah. And we got it done for $3,800.
Great.
So we're cutting bills and saving money where we can.
Good, good, good. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. Call for new initiatives. I've laid out some that I have thought of for the town. Are there others? I will put a call out not only to members of the town council, but also to our public of any new initiatives that we should be considering as we go into 2020.
Everybody would love to see it more walkable.
Yeah. Right.
Probably a few more parking spaces, which there's a few spots where we can get some infill that will work on the streets. So,
Part of the walkability is also look at sidewalks and what have you.
yeah, obstructions on sidewalks.
Derelict buildings. I wish some progress could be made on the buildings that sit and deteriorate.
I agree.
We've got a little progress on the Eagles building.
We just have to move forward with the historic ordinance.
Yeah. All right. The next thing, which is the last sheet of paper in the packet, is the proposed schedule for going through the budget process. And I should mention that, as an aside, that we're changing the administrative meetings. They had been on the 2nd and 4th. We're just going to go ahead and do them, and they are open to the public. They'll be on the 3rd Friday. And this is the meeting that I hold with the town clerk and the vice mayor and the treasurer are in attendance. So it is an open meeting. We hold it over at the town clerk office, which is over in the old school at 567 Mount Salem Avenue. So we hold them at 2:15, and we have one this Friday for January, and then the 21st, I believe, for February, and then March 20th would be the one in March. These are to be advertised in the paper. Again, these are kind of our, they're not working sessions, I don't want to use that, but they're basically kind of deal with the nuts and bolts of running the day-to-day operations of the town. So we'll drag some seats in, and as I said, they're open to the public. So, having said that, we have the schedule set up at having an administrative meeting to review the budget on March 20th. And that is then going to be followed by either the March 23rd or the 30th, and that's really for us to determine tonight, having a special town council meeting to prepare the budget. And that is the grim 2+ or 3 plus hour
It's
meeting.
gonna be on a Saturday night.
Is it Saturday? We were doing it on a weekday.
So, yeah, both of these Mondays,
Yeah.
the 23rd and the 30th.
Well, we could do it on a Saturday. Well, it says the week of March
Oh, I'm
23rd,
sorry.
30th, because Catherine can't come during the week.
Right.
It's difficult for Joe.
It's not easy for me either.
It's hard for you. Brad's always insane, especially, he made the mistake of walking in
In
the
years
office
past,
this
we've
morning.
done it on Saturday.
We did it Saturday last year.
All right. Did we do Saturday?
Yes,
last
we
year?
did.
That was during the week for some reason.
No, it was on a Saturday.
Lost at the same
I
time.
think,
I'm not going to argue with him.
no, don't try.
All right, so let's look at the week of,
So should we say tentatively the 28th of March then? That's the Saturday, right?
all right. March 28th, is there any problem with that? And what would you do, 9 to 12? If we did the next week, we could have that instead of the mayor's coffee, if we did that first one in April. April, which would be into the week of the 30th, so that would be
Are you gonna keep on doing the coffees?
yeah, for the short term.
That'd be Saturday, April 4th?
Yeah.
That's on March 28th.
I'm just throwing that out as another option. Either is fine.
Joe, what's your schedule? I'm in town, so
Not, I think that's the Saturday that Old Dominion Hounds has their point-to-point race scheduled for.
I think it
the
is.
4th?
Yeah,
The 4th.
so I don't think-
All right, so
Okay,
that's
don't
not
stick
going.
with the 28th.
All right. So Joe's going to the dogs.
Well, a lot of people in our neighborhood do, so.
28th work for you, Brad? Sure. Yeah, Marianne? For me, I tentatively didn't bring my phone with me. Catherine?
I think that'll work.
Okay, Joe? Yeah?
I think we should.
Okay, so we will go ahead with that special town council meeting to prepare the budget on the 28th. Barbara, would you go ahead and make sure that once we finish the schedule that you get out, especially to Patrick since he's not here tonight. Then what we'll have is we'll have the presentation of the preliminary budget at the regular town council meeting on April 13th. An ominous day. famous day, it's the birthday of Thomas Jefferson. And then May 11th is receive public comments and approve the budget, if possible. And if worst comes to worst, we have a backup date of June 8th. Yeah.
April 13th is the day after Easter. Do you think a lot of people will be traveling?
I doubt it, because it's not a federal holiday, so. It's a good point, I'm glad you brought it
They'll
up.
be working on their taxes.
Yes.
Nah.
That's true too.
May 11th, I won't be here because I'll be at my daughter's graduation, I hope.
Okay.
She graduates on Monday.
Well, I know she would graduate, no, but it's a long way from here.
Gotcha.
I'll be traveling.
No, that's fine, it makes perfect sense.
Taking your private jet out and back.
All right, so I think we've got our dates. The only one that we really had to determine tonight was the 28th, and then that is our schedule to go through. So the 28th will be, we'll go 9 to 12 tentatively on that date. And the idea is that we'll use the administrative meeting on the 20th to start looking at some assumptions. And are you and Joe going to meet ahead of time and do some preliminary work, or we're just going to just start with it straight away on the 28th?
I have a feeling Joe and I and Brad and I suppose we're going to have some serious conversations.
All right.
Here's my question for the town council, and it's strictly the layout. We're currently dealing with one sheet of paper with the income for all 3 entities in the town, and another line with the expenses of all 3 entities in the town. Does it make more sense to have one sheet that's the town of Washington income and expenses? There's one budget. The wastewater income and expenses.
Yes.
A separate budget. Okay.
And then you can combine them, obviously.
Exactly.
Right.
But
Yes.
that's easier to read. Okay.
Right, because you're focused on that.
Yes.
This is
part.
to compare.
Yeah.
So would you then have a 4th page that
That's a
was,
summary.
that does the summary?
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
consolidated.
All right.
Makes sense to me.
All right, we're just humming through this stuff. So we have that, the third piece that we talked about was to have a block party. We talked about at the holiday party that we had such fun, and we have some leftover refreshments that we thought we'd have a block party to celebrate.
How about a town social?
Town
I like
social.
calling it a town social.
Town social is fine. Town social is great. It was lots of fun. We need to kind of figure out ideas and a date.
Keep it to May or June and have ice cream social.
Yeah.
Or we can do something before that and then have an ice cream social.
Including
Can't
this.
look at the full year on that.
So we had originally talked about late January, or was it late February? Late February.
What about late February?
Late February. Right when everybody's really just like, ah.
It's not.
It is
And-
leap year.
Yeah. President's Day is the 17th.
Yeah,
We have like
I'm at that weekend. I know.
That's the 3-day weekend, right?
Yeah, that's what just.
Do you want to do like
wanna do
a
that.
town potluck? Not that the town does anything but provide refreshments. Everybody else just brings something, just have something fun and don't tell people to bring this or that or whatever, just show up.
What date should we do it?
How about that?
So you got the.
Should we do it Sunday afternoon?
I think so.
Okay.
March 1st?
March 1st.
That's the fall, yeah. Because you're
That has a
voting
nice
for
ring to
presidents.
it.
It's not the first day of spring, but we,
What is the first day of spring?
Is it the 23rd?
What's that?
First day of spring?
Oh,
January.
We go on daylight
March,
savings
be
time,
March
right?
22nd, March 23rd, somewhere around that time.
Yeah, that's what it
It'd be the vernal.
It's
first
nice
day
to
of
swear.
spring 2020
swear.
is March 19th.
gear it to something like celebrate spring or something like that.
March 1st.
So March 19th is the first day of spring. Do you want to do a welcome spring?
Maybe do it on March 1st, or a couple weeks early.
Right.
And with this weather?
Who knows?
All the
Yeah, it could be
flowers
like
will be
summertime.
Let's aim for March 1st,
Okay.
tentatively. Catherine, can I task you to kind of think about it and pull us in as you
Does that sound like a date?
You have such good ideas and stuff. I don't want to,
I'm flattered.
you don't have to think about anything tonight, but,
But Barbara would have to get the invitations out by, what, 4 weeks ahead or 3 weeks ahead?
Would we be sending individual invitations or something on the water bill?
We'll do some water bill.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
so we can do, the next water bill, we can say heads up, there's going to be an event on March 1st. So
Save the date.
let's say 2 to 4 in the afternoon? Or should we do, well, if it's potluck, should we do it 4 to 6?
So it's gonna be a little,
Just
just
a
more
little
later,
Yeah.
4 to 6, all right. 4 to 6 p.m.
because it won't be too dark, it should
Right.
be lighter.
Right.
so-
All right.
And we'll
Yes,
have-
week before.
So why don't we,
The next hour, yeah.
you can go ahead in your next water bill, if you want to remind me a few days ahead of time, I'll write something up. Or Catherine and I can write something up, make sure that we have something
Sure.
witty and pithy.
Spring into spring.
Get rid of
Spring
everything
is,
there to look at.
like it's spring into spring,
Spring into
use that spring
I'm
into
happy to
spring.
work with you on writing something up to warm up. Okay, great.
Are you the creative writer or are you just the editor?
Oh, I can prefer,
Okay.
editing came later in life.
So are you the creative writer?
No,
Okay.
you're better. No, Joe's good. Spring into spring is good.
All right, we'll start with that and we'll go forward from there.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that Kat was gonna lead the effort and then pull in council members?
Yes.
as-
Yes.
Rope us in.
She should liberally rope us in.
The images.
Don't go too
Here,
far.
let's not get too carried away.
All right, enough on that, that's enough to start with. All right, come back to the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Last thing is the urgent double underline situation at the pump house.
Double underline exclamation point.
At the pump house?
At the pump house.
Yeah, water pump. So the situation we have there is, one of the fittings, there is a very small leak, but it is a fitting that is under pressure. Okay? And the concern is with the evidence of corrosion on some of the pipes and fittings, that nobody feels comfortable putting a wrench on those pipes lest they break it. So what we'd like to do is have a company come in and test the thickness of the tanks, the tank wall, because that would be pretty indicative of the rest of the plumbing, because it's all done about the same time. So we got a quote from American Boiler in Richmond. It's $400 per tank. It'd be $800 to do the testing, plus I'm sure they'll charge us for travel. But then we'll know, what the condition is, and then Country Water can then, decide how they want to approach that little, like I say, it's a tiny leak, and you have to kind of watch it to see it drip. But it does drip, and it's only going to get worse over
So you're
time.
worried
But
it's
it-
explodes,
Well,
burst?
not so much that, if it starts to get larger, I mean, you'll actually get a stream of water. That's going to be a big problem. It's more of a concern is that we don't know if we can actually repair it, because we don't know what the integrity is of the piping. And these are large pipes. One of them goes to the bottom of the tank.
It could explode.
So you could have a problem.
And this-
So-
As well as on the tank walls themselves. If the tanks are getting aged, there's a chance of a pinhole. You guys are saying, we expect, we could walk in one day and see a stream of water coming out the
It's
side.
all
of the
copper,
house.
right?
Hmm?
It's copper?
Steel.
The second,
Carbon steel.
but this brings up a bigger issue, is that if there were ever a major repair, we would have to shut down the water, and we don't have an auxiliary water.
We don't, and as I understand, and Laura and Craig are the one that corrected me, I originally thought that from the pump house, we went up through the woods to the reservoir, and the reservoir served the town.
Right.
That is not the way it is running. Apparently, there was a leak somewhere in a line going to the reservoir, so either a valve or something was done, and now the pump house sends water down Harris Hollow into town. And any capacity that's not being utilized goes to the reservoir. And then the reservoir drops, and that's kind of how the system works. But with the lack of good controls on the tower, or on the reservoir, we don't know that if we had to do something, that we could fill it to its full, shut off the pump house, and then serve the town for X number of hours. Because again, we don't know how much water we use on an hourly basis over the course of the day. It's one of these things that you kind of back into, you realize, wow, we really don't know, to catch a phrase, we don't know what we don't know.
So do we have a way to assess that?
Possibly. It'll be manual, it'll be a little difficult, but I think working with ESS and Country Water, we can come up with a scheme that will allow us, that if we had to do service on it, we'd have a procedure so that we could turn the,
Is there
Turn the
any
pumps
reason
on.
not to restore it to the original
what's that?
functionality? And is there any reason not to restore it to the original plan of operation?
Well,
Where we are being served by the reservoir instead of running the pumps home?
well,
They're running
for one,
the pumps
we'd have to confirm that, yes, there was a leak in that line.
Right.
And what caused it, is it something repairable or not? If it's not repairable in that line, then it would be a question of, okay,
Yeah.
do we run another line,
Yeah.
a new line, which you could do with, high-density polyethylene pipe.
Right.
They do that in municipalities all the time.
There's something about the fittings that Dawn or Craig was explaining to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some question about that. But I mean, it is certainly doable, and it could be done relatively inexpensive to conventional
Right.
laying of pipe.
Right.
So I kind of had that in the back of my mind, what that cost would be. Obviously we'd have to get quotes and estimates to do that. So it's kind of a either and, if or type of situation.
I'm just curious, if it makes
No,
sense
but-
for us to just run it the way it's designed, run it.
Well, ultimately, that's kind of what you
We're
want
going
to
to
do.
mind.
But then we have another question mark that comes up is the health department and DEQ and various other people have said, this well we're on forecast for only so many years. So potentially that well could go dry. So we need a backup, and we don't have that yet. Where we've proposed and talked about is if you go to Piedmont and you go straight up into the woods, the town apparently owns about an acre up there.
Yeah.
And water was drawn from a spring up there decades ago. So the way to approach it would be bring in a drill rig, drop a handful of holes, get an idea, is there something there that could be tapped? So that could be a new location for us if the time comes. This well served us pretty well. We haven't had any real hiccups. We haven't had any problems with water quality or anything. It does lay in a floodplain. Fortunately, the pump house is high, but that is considered a floodplain. So there's a handful of issues in that. So while we address the current condition of the tanks and everything, the way it's built and the way it's installed in the pump house is there's two tanks. You open the end door, and there's two tanks, one behind the other. If the rear tank were to go, you have to take everything out. You can't go up the side of the buildings. I mean, you can't knock the wall out because of the pipe and everything else. So just today I said this to Gail, what I would like to do with council's approval is to reach out to a couple of companies that build prefabricated systems for doing water treatment based on our capacity, and just get a price, because if we look at what it cost to take a tank out, replace
Cheaper to
it,
just replace the whole organization.
pull it all out, and then the new one comes in literally mounted on a skid situation, so you literally push it in the building and hook it up, and then if we do have to move, we put a new pump house out, we just literally pull that out, put it on a truck, haul it up to the hill, and put it back in again. So it would be something to sort of like be in our files, so we have an idea, and if it happens to be 3 years down the road, can we update the numbers? But at least we have an idea of worst case scenario, what can we do? You know, and something like that might be the fastest way, because we could shut down and literally, the guys go in there with saws and torches and
Right.
doing slides like that.
So what we're gonna do right now, Brad, did they call you back yet for an appointment?
Not yet.
Okay, Brad is gonna call into American Boiler. This is a company that ESS/Clean Water gave us the name of.
Right.
So he's gotta call in, he's just waiting back to hear back from the guy who does the scheduling to get somebody out here to get that x-raying done. Because until we get that done, we don't know.
Yeah, nobody wants to touch any of those pipes.
Right.
And I,
All right, so you've got a couple of things. You want to get authorization to get the
the testing the tank.
testing of the tank done. You'd like to get the approval to investigate doing the skid system.
Right, basically a new filtration system.
And then I would throw a third in there is that we might as well get an update of what it would cost to get that auxiliary well system up and running.
Oh,
It
these
makes so much sense.
preliminary well testing? Yeah. I think Craig told me, he thought a driller could come in for a couple $1,000
Right.
and drop, a few holes. Because he's not putting a full well, and he's just going down to see if he can find water,
Right.
and then what capacity that might have.
Maybe that's what, I think then what I'm hearing is the third part of that suggestion is it may have several phases. One is to do the preliminary testing,
Mhm.
and then what is going to be the cost of the well? Because, if our current well goes south, or we do get a 100-year flood, and that whole thing floods, then that whole water system is contaminated until it gets cleaned out,
Right,
and then we're without water.
right, right. And even if we have to shut down for a day because of something happens, what happens to the inn?
Right,
That's
right.
such a critical thing.
The,
So that's why, coming up with some procedures, that like, we can do this, we can do that, then guys, okay, go ahead and start doing your pipe repairs.
And then the fourth thing would be the whole reservoir system.
Changing the pipe into the
Right.
repairs.
So
We're
first,
going to turn to the original design.
right, so
Right.
first is to get the bids from American Boiler.
Well,
Second
we have the
is
numbers,
Yeah,
We just wanna go ahead and authorize
authorize the spending of this.
about 800
Right.
plus.
The mayor can
The
authorize.
second is, I can actually, well, let's just go ahead and, since the council meeting, let's just go ahead and do it through the council.
Okay,
The second is to do the skid system, the third is to go ahead and do the work for the auxiliary well, and then the fourth is to look at the reservoir.
Right. And I'd like
You
to,
got that, Barbara?
if it makes sense, I think if we could authorize tonight, number one, American Boiler to do whatever, 300 plus time expenses, whatever. So let's say $1,500, whatever.
yeah,
And then I think if we could go ahead tonight and authorize getting a drill company in to just do the testing up there so that we know if we have a viable potential location for the well.
Right.
And if we can get,
and I can contact a couple of drillers and see.
All right.
Craig, I'm sure, can tell me a couple of
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
who do
exactly.
that for us.
Right.
And we'll get estimates.
and Barbara and I can help jumping in with phone calls and everything for you.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion that the town council have four parts to this motion. The first is to authorize the spending of up to $1,500 for the testing of the two tanks, as well as the cost of any labor and travel, to ascertain whether the tanks can be fixed. Second is to authorize Brad to begin the process of looking into to the skid system and coming back with some numbers for us. The third is to authorize, we don't know how much, but
So it gets proposed.
Yeah,
to get some estimates for the initial well testing on the town's property, and then also, as part of that, to develop kind of in however many phases necessary, what we would need to do to transition over to have that second auxiliary well, or have that auxiliary well available.
Right.
And the fourth, too, is evaluate whether it makes sense to reestablish the pipeline to go up to the reservoir and back down
Yep.
to the town. So that is the motion that I put forward. You wish to second that motion,
I will second it.
since you're going to be involved in most of it?
And how much money did you say?
Today's just,
Just the first part, just the
1,500.
1,500.
everything else is.
He's just going to do some,
February, you'll give him money to
Yeah.
go to the well drill, the testing.
right, well,
Yeah.
he'll have a better sense of what that
Right.
is. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion?
I would only note that authorizing this money tonight will officially hit 6 months into the year, the amount of money budgeted for maintenance to the waterworks. And we were already $10,000 over budget for work on the wastewater treatment plant.
But this isn't
And this is
wastewater,
not
this is the.
wastewater.
I haven't said those are two different items. I said tonight you're gonna hit your cap on how much we budgeted for the waterworks. And
For
we were all-
6 months?
Yeah, well, no, for
For
the
the
whole
year.
year.
Oh, okay.
No, you'll hit it 6 months. You'll hit your cap for the 6 months. So
Okay.
spend everything that we planned.
Okay.
And we're gonna be $10,000. We're already $10,000 over on the wastewater treatment plant.
We'll see, we can save some money
Year to date,
there.
so.
And not only,
So what are you trying to say?
You just made that.
he's
I'm
just,
just making that statement as
Yes,
something we need
he
to
is.
keep in mind as we start thinking about the budget.
Yep.
he is being righteously fiscally conservative, which is a good thing to have.
Yes.
So we're grateful for that.
Just mindful of our expenses.
Yeah. So that point is so noted. Any other discussion? All right, let's have a roll call on this motion. Brad?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 All right, we are through the agenda for that part.
Can I add one point going more to the budget planning? As we look at planning for this specific new budget year, should we take a little bit of time and try and do a 3-year or a 5-year projection? It's very hard to do, I know. But we have certain things that is going to be an annual 2 or 3% increase, insurances and stuff. But is that worthwhile, just to sort of say, where are we going to be?
Well, I think a lot of that's going to depend on these evaluations of the wastewater plant.
And I think that's.
No, I agree.
That's something we can do in the summer.
90% of what's eating is.
I think your concern is well noted, but my response would be, I think our numbers in terms generally of income, generally of non-wastewater capital expenses are relatively flat.
The revenues are a bit flat, but expenses, so if you start
I know,
seeing.
but the capital expenses, I think, the repairs and all those kinds of things,
Right.
I think that's where we need to do the assessment of the 3 to 5 year, because I think that's the part that's really dangerous.
That's where we need to get the infrastructure committee together,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll come up as a committee
Mm-hmm.
with,
Some ideas.
taking that.
Who's
sheet
on the
we did
committee
last
besides
year.
you and Brad?
Nancy,
Nancy.
and Karen Crop. And then we can come up with
That would be great.
everything.
Because you can say, over the next 3 years,
No, that's what I'm saying.
I think there's going to be, because if we get some housing, then there's going to be some tap fees. If we have some of this, there's some of that.
Right.
The cafe will come back into
We have a
play.
victim to wishful thinking about a lot of that, so it's really figuring out what our expenses are going to be.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Exactly,
they're,
it's
I always call them great numbers, because, you can't say for certain. But what I'm thinking is, you're looking at revenues, you're looking at expenses, and where's that cross point where you say, we're not sustainable anymore?
We're already there, that's why I'm so.
Yeah, so-
Well, I would like to segue into something that what you said that's been on my mind, is that because we need more revenue, that we ought to look at and maybe put on the agenda for next meeting about looking at the meals and lodging tax situation.
Yeah.
It's something we need to-
We can,
All things have to be on the table.
Yeah.
Budget this year.
yeah,
Exactly.
all right.
So is that something we could put on the agenda for next
Absolutely.
month?
Or we can want it for March.
I think it's one you want to do in March, right?
Well, yeah, we want it in
Or
March,
we should
not
be
February.
on the budget, because then we'll know what we're looking
Right.
at for
Okay.
next year.
Okay,
Then
so
we
in
can
March,
factor whether or not
that's-
we're in how much of the bind we're in,
Right,
and what we need to do to offset things.
right.
All right. Public forum.
Yes, I have three things. One, this issue of getting an overview of the needs of the wastewater treatment plant is very important to me. I'd like the town more walkable, but I've watched the expenses of this plant over the years, and we've had some huge expenses. It's our biggest outlay. It's our biggest piece of infrastructure. If it doesn't function, we can't expand. We have to get a picture of its capacity, where the potential expenses are. It worries me a good deal because something's always going wrong. And all of a sudden, something goes that has to be fixed immediately at a huge cost. And we need to try to get that more stable.
I agree.
Two, second item, I'm so impressed by the work that's been done. The treasurer's work, the work on the plant that you've done, everything. You've put in so much extra time. And you're organized, and you can see much more clearly, what's going on. And third, I'm sorry for my outburst at the beginning of the meeting with one more federal agency to deal with.
I can say that.
The Army Corps of Engineers has regional offices. I have a friend in Orange who called them out. Her son's a civil engineer anyway, and I think he called them. And they did come out. They gave this housing development some options, one of which was very expensive, which they didn't take. If you accept the engineer's plans, you're stuck with them, and they're generally very expensive. But anyway, they do have regional offices. And is there anybody who could get in touch with their region? Maybe it's in Fredericksburg.
I understand they're working with, I don't know why, but they're working out of Virginia Beach. So they're doing with the people down at Virginia Beach. And I don't know why they're doing with.
I know there's something closer.
Yeah.
But is there anybody who would have any influence? I mean, at least to call.
Here quite a few times for different reasons, and I'm not sure where they come from, but I know that they checked in Harris Hollow, on the Rush River, and probably when the plant was put in. So maybe we can try to find.
Yeah, call for the mayor to see,
Yeah.
that's a good idea, Nancy.
Well, I'm not at liberty to talk about it right now, but we are trying to get some other things done at this point to try to facilitate this process or expedite this process. And so I will talk again with Tim Pedrick and see if we have some other strategies as well that we might be able to use. So thank you for that.
So if I can just go back to your point about the treatment plant. When the plant was designed, I don't believe that it was designed for serviceability, to make it easy to service. And the plant's been in for a number of years, so you start reaching the life of certain equipment. And that's where, like I said, this one pump that was originally designed, the reason the pump has to be replaced is not because the pump is bad. There's a sensor inside the pump. The sensor's gone bad, and you can't repair it. You have to basically replace the pump. Because if we get the sensor, the guys can tear it apart and put it in, but that design doesn't allow that. And it's a very, very expensive pump. It's a high quality, but way below what we need, because the guys are using a little portable 110 volt pump, and it's making the job work. So, it's like, let's go back and figure out how do we make a repair with a better choice that will last longer. Like what I managed to come up with was, hey, for just about the same price of that one pump, we're changing out fittings and plumbing, and we've got 2 sets of everything. So when that other pump finally fails, we have everything in stock, ready to go. The guys can pull it apart. So we're trying to do that and working closely with TJ and the guys down there so that we can figure out what makes sense, what doesn't. And I've actually spent time with the repair guys from ESS. They'll actually climb in the tank, and, do the wiring and everything else. And they've been really excited to have somebody who understands this stuff and, says, let's look at doing this a different way. So that's what we're really after, is to say, okay, we don't have to spend enough, buy a $3,000 pump, I can buy one for $1,700. But if I make this change, then maintenance is going to be easier. It doesn't going to be, 2 guys, it can be done by 1 guy. So it's little things that will cumulatively add up, and hopefully we can bring those costs down. Just like the contract. We buy a lot of hours outside of our contract, but we're going to look and see, because those hours are more expensive than the hours inside the contract. So we're going to say, all right, let's actually bring those hours in. It boosts the base price of the contract, but we're going to save money because it's less overtime and less special pricing. So again, it's pieces here and there. We did have, for example, at the end of Gay Street, when they repaved, the roller that was paving the street went off the end of the pavement, the new asphalt. And when he did, he crushed the valve box, so that had to get pulled out. That's why they were down there one day repairing that.
$10,000 later.
Yeah, and it's not money you can recover from paver or from VDOT. It just happens, and you have to eat that. But I spoke with the contractor that did the work, and when we talk about doing budgeting and stuff, they're more than happy to come in and sit down with us, and we identify certain, standard things that might need their services, and pre-price them. We know exactly, hey, the valve box has to be changed. They make that change. And one of the things they noted to me is when they did the repair, they actually upgraded, because they said the way that was actually installed was really low end. And it didn't, lend itself to further repairs. You'd have to do all sorts of cutting and just, it was a monumental thing. So they said, we're going to put it back in correctly so that now, if it ever has to be serviced again, it's going to be less time and much easier. So here again, these are all these little things here and there, and we're trying to figure out what's the optimal way. So in terms of a contractor that we need to come in and do some digging, we'd have somebody on call, we know what that price is going to be, we know what their rates are going to be, because we have an agreement with them, and not have to just call somebody out of the blue and really pay through the nose.
And Brad, I am so grateful for all your work on this. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. All right, I chose open session, but I think that's just was left over from the previous meeting because we didn't go into closed session, so we don't need to go back into open session.
All right.
So, that's all right, it's no big deal. So, I just want to make sure I was correct on that. So, there being no other business in front of the council at this time,
Just close the public forum and go
then that may be, no, that's when you're doing with an ordinance or something like that, not for a public forum. It's only when you're doing with an ordinance or something like that.
Public comment session.
Public comment section. So, having said that, and in the spirit of expedition, I will go ahead and ask for motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second?
I'll say.
Good. All those in favor, Brad?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I have